The flight had been delayed by 3 hours, and somewhere around hour 2, the man in the seat next to me at the gate started to look the color of old wax. I noticed it the way you notice things when you've been trained to notice them, not all at once, but in pieces. The way he kept pressing 2 fingers against the inside of his wrist, the shallow rise and fall of his chest, the fact that he'd stopped looking at his phone and started looking at nothing. I leaned over just slightly. "Hey, you doing okay?" He turned to me, and honestly, under different circumstances, I might have thought he was handsome in a distracted, rumpled sort of way. Dark circles, a loosened tie, the look of someone who'd been traveling for too many days in a row. But right now, he just looked scared. "I'm fine," he said, which is what people say when they are absolutely not fine. "You're pressing on your radio pulse," I said, which either means you're a medical professional checking your own heart rate, or you're worried about something, and you learned that trick from the internet. He blinked. The internet. Thought so. I shifted in my seat to face him more fully. "I'm a nurse. Tell me what's going on." His name was Daniel. He'd been managing what he described as a weird thing with my heart for about 6 months. Palpitations mostly, nothing the cardiologist had flagged as dangerous, just uncomfortable. He had medication, he'd taken it, but he'd also had 2 coffees and no food since early morning, and the combination of altitude change, dehydration, and anxiety about a connecting flight had apparently conspired against him. "Okay," I said. "First thing, water. Do you have any?" He did not. I handed him mine. "Drink it slowly, not like you're trying to win something." He almost smiled. Here's what most people don't know about palpitations, and I say this because Daniel didn't know it, and I suspect a lot of people sitting in airports right now don't know it either. Dehydration is one of the most common triggers. Your blood gets a little thicker, your heart works a little harder, and if you already have a tendency toward irregular rhythm, even a mild fluid deficit can tip the balance. It's not dramatic, it doesn't look like anything. You just feel your own heartbeat, and suddenly it seems like the loudest, most unreliable thing in the world. I also told him about the Valsalva maneuver, that trick where you bear down like you're trying to lift something heavy or blow against a closed airway. It stimulates the vagus nerve. It can slow a racing heart. It sounds absurd when you describe it out loud, and Daniel looked at me like I'd suggested he recite poetry backward. But he tried it, and about 30 seconds later, he let out a long breath and said, Huh, I agreed. We sat there for a while. He drank the water. I watched him without watching him. That thing you learn to do, where your attention is steady but not staring, because staring makes people feel like patients, and sometimes people just need to feel like people. He asked me where I was headed. I told him. He told me he was heading home after a work conference, that he'd been away for almost 2 weeks, that he was tired in the kind of way sleep doesn't fix. "I know that kind," I said. "I bet you do," he said, and there was something in the way he said it. Not flirtatious exactly, just warm, like he was actually curious. That made me feel like we were 2 humans having a real conversation, which in an airport feels rarer than it should. Then he said, "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask." "Is there anything you actually enjoy about your job? Because it seems, I don't know, hard." I thought about it. I didn't give him the polished answer, the one about making a difference. I gave him the honest one. "There's this thing that happens," I said, "right before an injection. The patient is tense. They know what's coming and they're bracing for it. And there's this moment where everything is very still. And then I find the spot, and I say something quiet, and they breathe, and it works. The needle goes in and they barely feel it, and they look at me like I performed some minor miracle. I love that moment. I don't know if that's strange. That's not strange, he said. Also, I genuinely enjoy finding a good vein, I said, which probably sounds alarming. He laughed, actually laughed. The color came back into his face a little. The thing about intramuscular injections, and I'm getting there, I promise, is that so much of the fear people have is about the unknown. They imagine it will hurt more than it does. They tense the muscle, which makes it hurt more than it does, which confirms their fear, and then they tell everyone injections are terrible. It becomes a whole cycle. When I give an injection, I spend more time on the preparation than the procedure itself. The spot matters. For a standard intramuscular injection in the arm, the deltoid, you're working with a very specific triangle. You find the bony point at the top of the shoulder, come down about 3 finger widths, and you're in the right territory. The muscle there is thick enough to absorb the medication, close enough to the surface to reach without going too deep. I clean the skin in a spiral, outward from the center, never back in. Let it dry. This matters more than people think. Introducing alcohol into the tissue stings, and a sting at the wrong moment breaks trust. Then I hold the syringe the way you'd hold a dart, not a death grip, not a loose one, confident, unhurried. I tell the patient to let their arm hang heavy, like it's not attached to them, like it belongs to someone else for just a moment. That instruction sounds odd, but it works. The muscle releases. The angle is 90 degrees, straight in. People expect a slow approach, but a quick, decisive entry actually causes less pain. The skin's nerve endings are dense, and lingering over them is unkind. In. Aspirate briefly if the protocol calls for it. Inject slowly and steadily. Withdraw at the same angle you entered. Press gently with gauze. Don't rub. Rubbing disperses the medication unevenly and can increase soreness. The whole thing takes maybe 45 seconds. What takes longer is everything around it. The explanation, the breathing, the moment of trust. Daniel asked me, at some point, if I ever got nervous. Doing it, I mean. Giving injections. In the beginning, I said. My hands used to shake a little on the first one of the day. Not visibly, I think, but I could feel it. What changed? I stopped thinking about the needle, I said. I started thinking about the person. He was quiet for a moment. Then, that's a good answer. It's a true one, I said. Our gate opened about 20 minutes later. The line formed with that particular energy of people who've been waiting too long and are now collectively pretending they're not relieved. Daniel stood up, and he looked better. Not fixed, but steadier. He picked up his bag and turned to me. Thank you, he said, for the water and the Valsalva thing, and just the conversation. Eat something before you board, I said. Something with salt. Yes, ma'am, he said, and smiled and walked toward the line. I watched him go for just a second. There's something about helping a stranger in an airport, someone you'll never see again in a place that belongs to no one, that feels different from helping someone in a hospital. More accidental, more human somehow. Like the care found its way to the right place without anyone planning it. I picked up my bag. Some people leave an impression like a handprint on glass. There for a moment, then gone, but you remember the warmth of it long after the shape has faded.